Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Hub Underground. Matt Dolloff here with Ty Anderson, as we are every single episode. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, sometimes on YouTube. This one's on YouTube because we're doing a remote episode today. Ty, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on?
No, nothing much. We're coming off a busy night in Boston sports. We are obviously going to tackle the Bruins side of that. Um, Technically, the worst possible result for the Bruins. They fall to seventh in the draft lottery. They get absolutely screwed, as do all the teams that were in the top five. They all get pushed down two spots because the Islanders win the lottery, and name escapes me for the team that won the second pick. But yeah,
Well, they don't have a name. It's the Utah Hockey Club.
That's why the nameless, faceless entity known as the Utah Hockey Club gets pushed down. I wouldn't mind if someone had a theory that they rigged it for Utah. They want to grow the game out in Utah. Let's give them Michael Misa. So that makes sense. But no, in reality, Ty, it's obviously a disappointment that they didn't win the lottery, that they didn't get that top two pick. I didn't think they needed the first pick because, Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, is expected to go first overall. Bruins really need a forward. I hope they still go forward here, preferably center. So they really needed to get that number two pick. It would have been great to get Michael Misa, who really projects as, a franchise altering type of player. After that, I'm not sure there's that huge of a difference. I mean, tell me if you disagree. I'm not sure there's that huge of a difference between the next five players. I feel like there's going to be a center there that they could take, and they're going to take it. And so, maybe there's people that, have looked more into the prospects and have a stronger take on the individual prospects than I do. Like they want a certain guy over a certain guy. But to me, once you get out of that top two in this year's draft, there's not a huge difference between 3 and 7. So I don't think falling to 7 is necessarily this big disaster like it might be made out to be in certain corners of the internet and sports media. Like, I just feel like it's just funny. It's just funny that, of course they get the worst possible results in the draft lottery in a year like this. But I think ultimately they stay at 7. They take a center. I think there's going to be a pretty good center there available for them. Just what's your initial big picture takeaway on it?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two schools of thought here. Like, there is a possibility that one of these players who is projected to go in the top 6 still falls to them. It's possible that someone goes off the board, so to speak. It happens a lot. We see it a lot. That said, going from 5 to 7, it hurts in the sense that, you kind of knew that you had 4 strong center options. You had Michael Misa, who you mentioned. You had Anton Frundell. You had James Hagens, who, I'm not big on him, as we've gone over before, but projects to be a high-end center available in this draft. And then you also have Caleb Denoye from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. So you like those guys are like the certainties, right? And we say this knowing that drafting is an inexact science. The rankings you have in May 2025 will not be the same rankings you have in May 2027.
Right.
Players will be better than they're currently projected and what have you. However, the Boston Bruins, for better or worse, do not have the trust of their fan base when it comes to their front office's ability to identify talent that is not consensus talent. And so that's the problem for them, right? Is that now you said center, I'm saying center, the whole world is saying center. Okay, well, who's that going to be, right? At 7, it could be Roger McQueen. Roger McQueen had a back injury. He had a spinal fracture that basically derailed his junior career to a certain degree. It derailed his season this past year. He only played 17 games. You also have Jake O'Brien. Jake O'Brien, whom I really like if the Bruins are picking at 12th overall or 11th overall. Are you going to reach for a guy like that? You like his game, 6'2", two-way center, put up some points too in the O this past year. But are you reaching because of the need? There's also Brady Martin, Bruins fans would love his game. I'm convinced Brady Martin would be a Bruins fan favorite. However, most projections have him going in the late teens. So now you're going to reach 10 spots to grab that kind of player because you need a center. That's the problem that comes with being 7th overall. The consensus is kind of going out the window, and now you're going to rely on the Bruins, who have not nailed it when it comes to, identifying the right talent. I'm sorry, Cam.
Well, can you elaborate on that, Ty?
That's just, they haven't been good at that. They haven't been good when using their own books, so to speak. That's the problem, right? You go from grabbing a consensus guy, and again, assuming the board breaks the way we think it's going to break, things can change. We all know. But that's the problem, is that I think that a lot of people who have doubts about the Bruins front office were looking at this draft lottery going, oh my God, they could get a gimme here. That's great, because when left to their own devices, they're not good at it. But if there's a gimme, they can't mess that one up.
No brainer.
Right.
So, okay. So that's good to have that perspective, because I thought I've seen people put Jake O'Brien in that same tier that you're talking about with Anton Frondell, James Higgins, Caleb Denoyer. So I guess maybe you think he's maybe just a tick below those guys. And another guy that we haven't really mentioned is Porter Martone, who's a wing, but he's been compared to the Kachucks. So like I think
he'll be gone.
Yeah, he'll be, but I'm saying he'll go to top 5 and he'll push those centers down. And so if you got Schaefer, Porter Martone in the top 5, and so then you got 5 center options between Higgins, Frondell, Denoyer, O'Brien. Oh, and I guess McQueen would be in that, because McQueen's been described as he's going to be a center. But I guess that wouldn't be ideal with the back injury. Isn't McQueen the guy that they've been scouting? Like Don Sweeney has personally scouted this guy?
Yeah, he was part of the contingent that saw him about a month ago now. They're going to get a few more looks at some of these guys, whether it's the U18s, or I think Denoyer is the only guy who is still playing for like playoff hockey in the CHL right now. So he might be the only guy you get more viewings of between now and the draft in terms of like playoff style viewings. But, like, again, I like O'Brien in a vacuum, but are you reaching now based on your need? That's kind of the problem that you wanted to avoid here if you're the Bruins. And again, like, we're recording this podcast right now. 2 years from now, it could be different. He could be the steal of a draft. David Pastrnak goes in the mid-20s in his draft year. But like
McAvoy's a good example. 14th overall, and within a year, he's like, oh, he should have gone like top 3. So like you never know.
Yeah, you never know. It's just like it's just, again, when this franchise has been left to their own devices, they have oftentimes prioritized the wrong thing, or they've gone so down the beaten path that you're like, what? Who? And so there's that part of it.
Yeah.
And I can't blame the Bruins for being excited. It's the highest pick they've had since Tyler Seguin. It's their highest natural pick since Zach Hamill. So like, they should be excited. They should feel good. But the fans are not going to feel good, because, as you said off the jump, this was the worst possible outcome you could have had. And given the draft board and your needs, this may very well be the worst possible outcome you could have had if the board breaks the way it can. And so right now in May, you just don't feel good about it. And I think that's where the issue comes for a lot of Bruins fans. I understand it. I understand that we all seem whiny and bitchy, and we don't, like, now all of a sudden we're all draft experts. I understand all that. Bruins fans are just so desperate for something to feel good about right now. You want something that you can kind of sink your teeth into and go, yes, I feel confident about this. 7th overall, it's like the one pick that you could get that would make you not feel confident about the direction they could go.
Yeah, so I guess, I wouldn't rule out them trying to move up a spot or two if they really want a certain guy. They did amass all those draft picks, prospects at the trade deadline, so I guess I wouldn't rule that out.
I'd look at
Chicago. I would rule out trading down.
I would look at Chicago there. Like that. Like I think that if you look at Chicago right now, they really need a defenseman, right? And if they could move down, and if they could grab, there's the second best defenseman. Name escape me right now. Sorry, because I'm not focused on defensemen right now. Obviously, right. The Boston Bruins.
It would be great if that guy was, considered top 5 or 6. That would, would be a huge help.
Right. And so if Chicago, like, if they wanted to move down, you look at their forward pipeline, right? Like, they have Oliver Moore, they have Connor Bedard, They have Nazar. They drafted another winger late in the first round. I think it's 2 years ago or last year.
Mhm.
They have forwards. They got forwards like crazy. Their top 2 defensive prospects are a kid that we saw late in the year whose name he's not Russian, I don't think, but he's like 19-year-old smooth skating defenseman, can be pretty good. And they have Kevin Korchinski. So like they need another defenseman, in my opinion, in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so if they want to move back and they want to grab, like, that's a team that if you're the Bruins, I think you would look at and say, like let's try to make a deal here. Because that's third overall, right?
Right.
Like that's gonna be a pretty penny in terms of a trade. Like you might be talking, like you might be talking like your seventh overall pick and that Toronto pick next year, which I'd rather. I'm all about having more cracks, as many cracks as you can in the first round. You know what I mean? So I'm a
Yeah.
little reluctant to make that kind of trade.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the order here. Okay, so the Sharks stayed at number 2. I was curious about that. Yeah, Utah could only go up to number 4. Okay, so that makes sense.
The defenseman,
Um,
by the way, is Jackson Smith. That's who I
Jackson
was
Smith.
thinking.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, name rang a bell. I was wondering about San Jose because it's like, well, they don't need like James Higgins. They got plenty of forwards, but I guess moving up to 2 would be probably not happening. So they're probably just going to take Misa and let's fit him into the mix.
Yeah.
Um, so
Lev Shinov is the defenseman I was thinking of. He played at Michigan State. He was the second overall pick in last year's draft.
yeah, okay, I
And
remember that. Yeah.
he's from Belarus, not Russia. So that's what
Oh,
I was thinking
please,
of.
yeah, we're gonna have to
Yes,
bleep that out. I think.
yes. But they also
Oh,
like the Blackhawks also have Sasha Boisvert, who is gonna be playing here in the backyard in Boston next year, I believe. For I think he's going to BU. He's going to BU or BC. I can't remember, but he's transferring out of UND. So like they got forwards like crazy in Chicago. So they it would make sense to go defenseman, for their pick. So but you're not going to take Jackson Smith third overall. Like you could move down the board and get an additional asset for him. For that pick, Boston might be the team that says we want to get in that top 3. We really believe in, whoever it may be. And so that could be an option for them as well. But it's that this is the ugly part of picking seventh overall. It's kind of like, it's like the Durant and Greg Oden thing for the Boston Celtics back all those years back when, and they ended up getting, what was it, 8th overall?
they fell
Wasn't
to
it?
5th, and they took
5th overall.
Jeff Green,
Yeah.
but they traded him for Ray Allen. So I don't know. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise. I would have
Also,
taken Durant though.
also Greg Oden was like the most hurt player in like human history.
Yeah,
So like there was
Danny Ainge
also
claimed
that.
he would have taken Durant first overall that year. I don't, necessarily disbelieve him on that one. The
Yeah.
way he's maneuvered around drafts.
No, I could see that happening. But like,
Yeah.
but you right, like you feel good about prospects and here in May. You got to see how it all shakes out. But to be in a spot where you could have really made some hay, in terms of accelerating the timeline, so to speak, to have it go the way it went, and now we're sitting here talking about maybe trading additional assets to get back into the realm that you want to be in, that's frustrating. And for what it's worth, I don't believe the Bruins are going to trade that pick. I think
They're not going to trade down.
I don't think they're going to trade the pick in general.
They're just going to stick it, pick it and stick it.
I have a hard time seeing them having the gumption to want to trade more assets to move up 4 spots. And B, I think they realize that like this is the only way to get high-end talent that is going to be in the prime of its career, when it comes to your franchise, right? Like you can't keep building through free agency. It's just too hard. You're signing guys at 28 to inflated deals that you hope age moderately well. Like they're not going to age well. You just hope they age serviceably.
Yeah.
You
just have to hope you don't have to buy them out at age 33, 34.
Yeah, or
run into.
Or attach a second round pick or a first round pick to get rid of the contract, 3 years down the road.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess the Roger McQueen back injury throws a wrench into it. I just figured at 7, like, I know that's the worst case scenario technically, but I just feel like they're in a spot where they could just take the best player available. It would help if, McQueen was healthy and there was another defenseman. And so one of these centers falls to them. So I guess we just got to hope that the board falls their way. It doesn't feel like there's reason to have much confidence there. But you mentioned, Ty, 7 is just low enough to be worried that they're going to take a pick Is Ozzy bothering you there? Ozzy's cat, Ty's cat, Ozzy.
No, Bruiser just came up and kicked her off the couch because he's a dick.
Oh. And then he slipped and fell, I assume.
And she's
That
looking at me like,
wobbly a-hole.
she's looking at me like, what the hell, man? I was just napping. Why did that happen?
Why is he so mean to me?
They fight all the time, but it's like, it's not like an aggression. It's just annoying.
They just annoy the hell out of each other. All right.
Yeah.
I was just seeing a tail wagging in the back. I was
Yeah.
wondering what was going on.
I was getting bumped into, so I was like, that has to be Bruiser.
Yeah, this is going to be great for the audio listeners. So yeah, you mentioned earlier, like 7 is just low enough in the draft where now we got to worry that they're going to take the guy where I'm like, huh? What the hell is that? So the guy that I'm looking at for that, I want to credit our friend Zach, friend of the program, P1 from day one. He said, I think they take Jack Nesbitt, who is a 6'4" center. I looked him up a little bit, did a little bit of cursory research. Big guy, net front type of guy. Physical. It feels like a Bruin, but I don't know. It feels like he's projected to go in like the middle of the first round.
Yeah, I think he's I think he's later in the first round, to be honest with you.
Second half of the first round. But yeah, that's my pick if the Bruins make a head scratching reach kind of pick.
I don't know if I'd call him a reach, but if we're gonna go that route and think about a guy that they might, like in terms of intangibles and what he can bring, Carter Bear is a guy that feels like a Bruin to me. High motor, not a big guy, but just a scorer, right? And he brings a lot of intensity, brings a lot of energy. I also think that way about Brady Martin too. So like maybe that's another example of a guy that could be an off the board kind of reach for them at that point. Yeah, I got a feeling they're going to stick with Jake O'Brien. That's where I land with this.
Yeah, I landed with that weeks ago, and I'm still not coming off that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about him probably 3 months ago.
Yeah, it was a while back.
When we were thinking about them, maybe not being a bottoming out kind of team and being more of a on the outside looking in by about 5 points, right? None of us saw them finishing the year with 5 wins over their final 18 games. Like, let's just be real. None of us saw that coming, but that's how it played out. And that's the other part of it, Matt, that I want to get to real quick. It's like you want to be mad at the Bruins for earning 5 points in their final 8 games of the season. But like realistically, they engineered a post-deadline tank job as best as you could realistically expect. They shut down their top 2 defensemen. They brought Patrick Brown and Vinny Lettieri up from the minors, and they were playing them in their top 9. And like they tried about as best as you could reasonably to have the worst,
No, they should have
finish they could.
They should have benched Pasternak, pulled the goalie, start putting the puck in their own net. I don't know why they didn't take it another step further.
I will say this: I was advocating for them to pull Jeremy Swayman in overtime of game 82 because then you wouldn't get the point. You would not get the loser point, and you'd say, we wanted to win that badly. It's like, okay, whatever. So you want to get mad about that, right? Like you just naturally like, what the hell, man? Why'd you do that? But it's like, I don't know what more they could have done outside of what you're saying, sitting David Pasternak, who did not want to sit. He wanted to set the example for his team that you got to continue to compete. And I respect that part of it. Like,
don't sell your soul. Why? So you could be up a spot or 2.
He also has an Iron Man streak going that I don't think he wants to get rid of.
It's like, and it's the lottery. Like, it's not like they were guaranteed. Unless you're guaranteed a McDavid type of player, I just don't believe in the whole like selling your soul thing. Like, I think they handled it as well as you could. Just put out a terrible roster and just let it ride. That's basically what they did.
Did you watch the draft lottery?
No, I saw the clips on Twitter.
What a hilariously convoluted process that was.
The 4-digit thing? Like, I saw you tweeted. Was it you that tweeted like a screenshot of like the 2 pages of all the 4-digit numbers?
Yes.
I was like, I'm tired, boss. I can't follow along with this.
Oh yeah, no, nor should you have been able to.
I mean, I guess I could see the suspense of it, where it's like, it is almost like you're playing Powerball. Like you get to the 3 numbers, it's like, come on 5, come on 7, whatever.
Yeah, it's like playing Keno. It's like the same exact kind of concept. It really was. Like, but
that's more fun, I guess, than just pulling names, pulling the team logo out of a box, I guess.
It makes sense from a probabilities standpoint. It makes perfect sense from a probability standpoint. It is not a made for TV event though. Oh my goodness. It was like they're like explaining it to the fans and everyone's just like, I feel like everyone's at home going, "Oh, what'd he say?" It was not a easily digestible way of explaining things.
Yeah, no, it's not exactly. Yeah, it's not exactly for the layman the way they were handling that. And you
Right.
probably could have put more entertaining people, like put Paul Bissonnette out there, like waving his
It,
arms.
it was kind of like in Billy Madison when the guy is like speaking Creole at at Billy
Yeah,
Madison. He's like, "Oh,"
yeah.
it's like what it felt like. Slow
Slow
down.
down.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to follow along with that anyway. But yeah, no, that's just. Of course, it went exactly the way we were all expecting, right? We were expecting it to go the worst possible direction for the Bruins. If they won the top two, if they won the first overall pick, we probably wouldn't have known what to do. We would have
No,
been like,
no,
oh great, now they got to take the defenseman. Probably would have found a way to be upset about it.
no. I think the best case scenario for the Bruins would have been you get first overall pick and you trade it to either San Jose or Chicago because they want that defenseman,
Yeah,
and they don't want to lose out to the other one. Um, what's interesting about this too for a team like San Jose is, they had the first overall pick last year. They're probably pretty happy that they do not have the first overall pick this year because had they done that, they would have been out on the the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes because you can't win the lottery 3 years in a row. So in San Jose, they're probably very happy today that they are picking second overall because
okay,
this keeps them in the running for next year if they want to get Gavin McKenna.
okay. So yeah, so the Islanders can be a little perturbed by that then.
Yes, yeah, like oh
Like,
cool.
really, this is the year we jumped 10 spots. Great.
Well, what's going to be interesting about the Islanders is that the Islanders have, I think, every reason in the world to take um Matt Schaefer. That said, James Higgins is from Long Island. He grew up an Islanders fan. He's really good friends with Islanders prospect Cole Iserman. So, like,
So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a trade for that then.
could
Trade they trade to San Jose or Chicago.
Right, right. But like, there is the prophecy of the Long Island native, playing for the hometown, being like the hometown hero right
Mhm.
away. Like,
Yep.
can they resist that? And the Islanders can say, well, we already have Matt Barzal. Do we really need another small-ish center? Well, you could trade
Right.
Matthew Barzal. You can trade him to a contender. You could probably get even more draft capital, for
Mhm.
down the road if you really want to. And so the Islanders are this is a unique spot for that franchise, and I'm curious what direction they go with this pick. Maybe perhaps a trade as well. To your point, of saying, "Hey, you want Schaefer?" I mean, we kind of like Higgins because the other part of it too is Islanders have Noah Dobson. They need. Listen, they can always use more defense, but I don't know. There's one team that could probably go for the exciting forward and get away with it. It's probably the New York Islanders, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But speaking of James Higgins, you had some interesting commentary on him yesterday on Toucher and Hardy. I've been curious about this because we've talked a little bit about James Higgins and how you weren't big on him. But like, is it because of him specifically, or do you look at it as you don't want the Bruins to take him because the Bruins won't know what to do with him? They won't know how to develop him. They might even ruin him for all we know. They don't like. They're going to try to make him something that he's not, which is a smaller but very fast and very skilled forward. And so maybe it's a little of both. But like, would you rather the Bruins? Does this speak to the Bruins? Like they still want that two-way guy. That's what they want. They want a cerebral two-way, do-it-all kind of center as opposed to someone like James Higgins. And are you just throwing your arms up at this point? It's like, yeah, don't bother with Higgins. I guess it doesn't matter at this point now that they're at 7.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't even bother with that guy. Just you want the two-way guy, just go with the two-way guy because I know that guy is probably going to have a better chance of working out than a guy like James Higgins in this team's system.
Yeah, that's how I would feel about it because I feel like if you're, the Bruins are like a person who doesn't like sushi but keeps going to the sushi restaurant. Like, I hate this. Well, let's stop. Get a different meal. You don't like sushi.
Yeah.
You don't like go eat something else. That's kind of what they feel like if they keep drafting speed and skill guys and then being mad at the speed and skill guys for not being muckers and grinders and putting guys through the boards. It's like, yeah, well, you knew that they weren't that guy when you drafted them. Why stop trying to make a hamburger out of the sushi? Like, it's not going to work. You want a hamburger.
Poured soy sauce on their cereal. Like, what is with this? Why
Yeah,
like that?
that's what it felt. That's what it feels like to a certain point. And so, yeah, they want the two-way guy. That's why I think Jake O'Brien makes the most sense for them. Like that. Like that's why. If they were at 5 or 6, I think they'd go with Caleb Denoyer. Like I think they want that kind of guy. Like Denoyer, like kind of, he's very much like if everything hits, he's like Sean Couturier. He's like Mark Stone. Like he's a defensively responsible two-way forward who,
but he can give you 70, 80 points on top.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Think about like Couturier before he had all the injuries, right?
Yeah.
30 goals, 75 points, a couple years in a row. Like that's kind of what you'd be looking at. Like you'd be looking at Bergeron. Like that's what you'd want. Like, in terms of production ceiling wise, he's
right. That's a guy that could work as your top center with Pastrnak.
Yes,
you don't
exactly.
have to have the franchise guy necessarily, the elite guy.
Right. And that's why I think they'd go with a guy like that there. And O'Brien's a good bet there. Like he is. It's just, he's got to add some weight on too. He's 6'2", but he's 165 pounds, 168 pounds. Like
seriously, Jesus,
he can add 30 pounds. I mean, he's a teenager, like it's gonna happen.
Talk about hamburgers, sushi. Let's start hitting the calories there, buddy.
But like that's going to be a challenge for them, for that player as well, if that is their pick. But yeah, no, they clearly value that, right? And I don't disagree with that in terms of where you want to go, right? Like where you want to go from here. You have Chris Pelosi in your system who looks like a high energy kind of forward, probably more wing than center. And you have Dean Letourneau, like and Letourneau, like you hope is a high scorer, right? Like you got to see it before you believe it. It's going to take a while. Mm-hmm. But if you think he's Tage Thompson, okay, then strap in because you're going to have to get ready for a long process and you're going to hope that he develops into a scorer. So if you have that down the middle, you also could use the two-way guy. And this is why I think that, like, like if you look at Roger McQueen and you like you're like, hey, all right, 6'5" center. It's like, well, okay, they already have that guy right now. Do you want two of those guys, or like where do you want to go with that? And so, this is why this pick is so intriguing. And I think Don Sweeney's kind of saying the quiet part out loud to a certain degree, where he's like, he said twice yesterday. He goes, yeah, when you're picking this high, you can't mess it up. You got to nail it. Like, I think he knows that this pick is going to determine his job security. Like, he ain't picking this high again. I'm telling you right now, he's not picking this high again, unless the Bruins acquire a first-round pick on a tanking team. Like, he ain't picking this high again.
Possibly Neely and Sweeney, honestly, are like hitching their wagons to this pick. If he's not in the NHL in 2-3 years and he's not a legitimate impact guy for them, like they could be in trouble, I think.
Right. And let's say they miss the playoff. Like I'm telling you right now, like they are going to spend to the cap. They're going to try to make the playoffs a year from now. But what if they don't? And what if they're in the lottery again, but this time they're picking 14th overall? Well, I'll tell you what, Sweeney's getting fired. And you better hope that you nailed that 7th overall pick, because you're kind of back in the no man's land of the NHL draft. And so
yeah,
I think that's kind of, that's something to consider here as well, is that there's a lot. This is the concerning part. Going back to sort of my opening thought, like they're desperate. And how does a desperate team operate, right? You got an owner who wants to be back in the playoffs, called this past season embarrassing. You have a GM in the final year of his contract, and then you have a team president who may have to fire that GM, a friend and coworker of his for over 3 decades, basically, like whether it's on the ice or in the front office. Mm-hmm. And they're going to hire a new head coach. So like, not exactly a mix that you go, I feel great. Like there's a lot in that stew that you go, ooh, that might spoil, and so that's kind of, that's the other part of it, that if they get desperate with the 7th overall pick, okay, where does that lead them? Does that lead them to the right direction or the wrong direction? Like that's also part of this equation as well, if you're the Bruins.
You also talked about the fan desperation. Like the fans are desperate for something. I think maybe you can look at it as maybe a silver lining, bright side kind of thing where it's like, this kid's got to play. Whoever they draft, they can't wait until he's 23, 24, and then they start just sprinkling him in and saying, well, and go like 5, 6 years in a row. We're going to give him a chance to compete. And then he languishes in Providence for 5, 6 years. Like they can't afford to do that. This kid's got to play. I said 2, 3 years. I think 2 years tops. Kid's got to be in the NHL. He's got to play when he's 20. Put up with the mistakes. Develop him at the highest level. Like we got to see this kid when they, regardless of whether he's like quote unquote ready for the highest level. Like we got to see this kid in the NHL, and I think they know that, and I think we're going to see him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the Providence vortex cannot claim another soul. Like it just,
Right.
it just, I
Shang
can't.
Tsung down there is throwing fire skulls at everybody.
It's just like, and you hope so. Like you hope that you get a good player here, and that he can be an impact player for you right away. And listen, we're all very down on the pick, in terms of like where they could have been versus where they are. But like 7th overall, you can still get a good player. Obviously, Mark Scheifele was 7th overall. Nazem Kadri was 7th overall.
Yeah.
Quinn Hughes was 7th overall. Like it's not like it's not like you're picking 129th overall here. Like no, it's 7th overall, and so you should feel okay about it. It's just, where do you go, right? What's the move? What do you prioritize? I asked Don Sweeney, last night, I said, what are the traits you're looking for in terms of this pick? Like this player's got to have this, and this to be considered for the 7th overall pick. He mentioned, the pace. He mentioned the intangibles of being a hardworking, aggressive player. So that would lead me to believe, again, it's Jake O'Brien. That's what I think they're going to go with this pick. A lot of time to see some jockeying between now and June 27th, but I think that's where they're going to go, because that just seems to check all the boxes that they appreciate, both externally and internally, what we know they like and what I know they like. And so I think that's where they go. The real thing to watch here, Matt, is in my opinion, like what happens before 7th overall, because does someone get desperate for a defenseman and maybe buck the trend a little bit here? Now there's a player that you didn't think was going to be available, now available at 7. This happens every year, where most years, I should say, where there's a guy we think is going to go top 10 or top 5, and he kind of slips a little bit. And it's on you to recognize that and to not get spooked by it and to make the call and believe in the player. This is where I think it gets interesting, because like when you're a top 10 pick, there's so much written about you. There's so much footage of you. There's so much that's been said about you since you were 15 or 16 years old in most cases. So the book is greater, right? And so what does your book say about a guy, right? And can you use the other information around you to make a good call, right? Like it's a little bit, you're operating with a little bit less information when it's somebody who's projected to go in the 30s and you want to grab them at 23. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have more information here and more stuff readily available. And there may be a player that you look at and go, this guy's been beat to shit by pundits and analysts and all this, and he's been better off for it. So we like this player. Like that's possible too. And so, with a top 10 pick, like you just have more information. It's about how you use that information, though. Do you follow the trends, or do you like there's just a lot more information, I think, available with guys in the top 10 than, say, the late 20s.
Absolutely. And to your point, like, don't tell me they're going to be unprepared for what happens leading up to 7. Like, please tell me they're going to do what any fantasy GM worth his salt does in his fantasy draft, is have a queue set up, have a top 7. Like, have 7 guys that you're okay with picking at that spot. Don't be like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. Like, imagine Jake O'Brien goes 5th or 6th and they don't know what to do. And then then they reach for the Jack Nesbitt or whatever, like someone who's not expected to go there. So yeah, please tell me they're going to be like anyone on Yahoo, where you have the queue on the right, where it's like, all right, I'm comfortable taking any of these guys. If the well dries up, I'll take the last guy there. Tell me they're going to be prepared for that. So, all right, I think that does it for this episode. A little bit of a top 10 of the draft preview for the Bruins. We'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. Do you have any closing thoughts for us, Ty, before we get out of here?
No, we're going to talk more about the coaching search on Thursday. Asked Don Sweeney about that. What I can tell you is that he confirmed that Jay Leach and Joe Sacco will be interviewing for the head coaching job. Sacco, we knew about. Jay Leach, we did not. So that's something that's going to happen.
Interesting.
The Bruins also have some candidates that are still coaching right now. So I'm curious who that could be. My belief is that it's Misha Donskov out of Dallas. I think that checks a lot of boxes for them. I wouldn't rule out Mitch Love, who is currently in Washington. And maybe there's a guy on Winnipeg staff or something that intrigues the Bruins. I'm not exactly sure, but they did confirm that there are guys that they want to interview that are still coaching right now. One name that you've seen out there that has been mentioned is Mark Savard. I don't think it's him. I'm not sure, obviously, because the Bruins are Fort Knox, but I don't believe that Mark Savard is being considered right now for the head coaching role. But we'll wait and see how that all unfolds between now and I would imagine it gets done probably in mid-June. I have a hard time believing it's not going to get it's kind of weird to enter free agency or to enter the draft without a head coach. Like that's just kind of an odd dynamic. So I imagine it gets done before the draft.
Yeah. Between even say Dallas gets to the Cup final and they really want to talk to Donskov, once that's over, I imagine it'll move relatively quickly. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. If you made it this far, thanks. I love you. This is the Sports Hub Underground. I am Matt Dolloff. He's Ty Anderson. We're talking hockey every single week. We're going to do another episode for you later this week that will be live in the studio at 98.5 The Sports Hub, but we wanted to get some quick thoughts out on the Bruins getting the number 7 overall pick in the draft. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again soon.